at 10, animatronics. We can joke all we want about how Afton has a hardcore bloodlust in this series, but his desire for human destruction has been there since the start. Thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files, we learned that the Funtime robots, the ones used in Sister Location, were actually some of the first robots Afton ever made. Not exactly the first, but among the first. And that they were built with special containment chambers inside to store away items, which we all know is code for children's storage tanks, which we see the Funtimes actually have in their blueprints from FNAF 6. So this means that Afton has been wanting to kill kids since before his kids had died. Hell, even maybe before his kids were born, depending on the timeline. Which at this point is as simple as my feelings for Vanessa, which is not simple at all. If anyone like cosplays Vanessa, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. Possibly killed wife. This hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so it's currently not canon. Many people still consider William Afton offing his wife to be the story of her demise, even though technically we know nothing about her, and she could still be alive for all we know. Many people consider her to have died in either a car crash or because William killed her, and those are like the most common thoughts on the matter. Although her dying in a car accident thing came from like a FNAF original music video that was probably using Minecraft characters that is in no way canon to the series. Like, I've had people yell at me in my DMs telling me that it's canon that she died in a car accident, but no, it's not. It's not even canon that she died, really, but the potential is still there that William was the reason she kicked the animatronic parts filled bucket. Since it's only a possibility though, it's only number 9. If it gets confirmed, I'm more than willing to bump it up higher, because like statistically speaking, your spouse is the person most likely to kill you, so she should have been on her guard. And at 8, missing children's incident. I mean, this is a fairly low-hanging fruit since it's like the inciting moment for the whole series, but I think it's worth calling out at least number 8. The missing children's incident, in case you forgot, is the infamous incident where 5 kids go missing inside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and are never seen again. Police investigated but were never able to find the bodies, thus they had to let their suspect, in this case William Afton, go due to a lack of evidence. However, this is one of the most horrifically painful moments that you can think of, especially if you're a parent yourself. 5 families went into Freddy Fazbear's wanting their kids to have the time of their lives in 1985, but left without their favorite people. They had the time of their lives, alright, it just so happened to also be the end of their lives. And not only that, but Afton ends up getting away with it since the police were terrible at their jobs or were getting paid off. Still not sure which one is the case in this series, but the missing children's incident is one of the most messed up things to ever happen in this series, but without it we wouldn't have the series. At least it's all fake, right? And at 7, stored his daughter. While we know Afton isn't the best father, I think it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter into an animatronic testing facility. That seems a bit too far if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was even the one who sent us as Michael down there in the first place, and then we get shoved full of entered bits so that they can escape. Did William know about that plan? Unsure, because like in FNAF 6, Baby says that she'll make her dad proud. So was that William's intention to like send us down there so Baby could get out? And if that was the case, why lock her down in there in the first place? I mean, like, if she was your daughter, why not have her just like chill around the house, right? Like in the books, Baby is able to transform between Baby and like a human looking animatronic at will. So why not add this to that version, and then you can have your daughter back, albeit a little more messed up. But like more like you in the long run, right? I don't know. This family is messed the hell up, and nothing makes sense. And at 6, lied about Remnant. Now, this isn't confirmed, much like the fact that he possibly killed his wife. However, this seems like the most likely explanation to me. So if you want a full explanation as to why I think Afton was the one who lied about Remnant, go check out that video linked up in the iCard. But I'm going to wrap this up quickly here. Basically, there have been 3 fires so far that were meant to finish off William Afton, and none of them have worked. The reason Henry tried fire was because that's supposed to be the thing that can burn off Remnant. However, Remnant can also be found in liquid form, so how can it be molten but also be burnt by fire? It makes more sense that William made up the lie that he could be killed by fire, so Henry would keep trying and failing to kill him, so he wouldn't have to worry about actually dying, since literally every time he's been caught in the fire, he has survived. And the other animatronics infused with Remnant also survived, like Baby, the puppet, and entered in FNAF 6, as we see from the Blob in Security Breach. Halfway through into number 5, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did. It just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy pops up into your VR headset said, then takes over your body without your consent, so now you end up killing for him. That's kind of messed up. Actually, no, not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. I mean, she knows what's going on too. She actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like, what the hell is the dynamic here? I mean, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then causing them to make a rabbit costume so you're still a furry is a whole other set of kinks that I don't even want to talk about. And then, she knows that there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William has been saying to her, and she's now, with full knowledge of her darker half, willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, despite never calling the police, and then lets that darker half track him down. And at 4 later that night. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin the game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, but then goes home to his kids, reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break his window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too. Technically speaking, anyone we encounter can be a serial killer. And that is a horrific thought, since also you're only alive because everyone you've ever encountered has chosen not to kill you, which only makes the whole anyone could be a serial killer thing even worse. And in this case, this man literally just killed someone and then comes home and is going to yell at his son who's been in his room all day. Like, god damn, bro, how much residual anger do you have suppressed inside your body? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Stuffed. One of the most deranged things that William Afton did was stuff the bodies of the original 5 missing children into the original 5 animatronics: Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And the craziest part is that he didn't get caught for it. Yeah, he didn't. The animatronics smelt like death, started leaking blood and other fluids, and the police didn't bat an eye. He put these bodies in animatronics that perform for other kids and their parents every single day. How does anyone think that that's a good idea? Unless it was his way of displaying his kills or something, like some of the crime shows like to mention. How some killers enjoy the world knowing what they did, since it helps them feel more powerful or something, fuels their ego. Like maybe even if they didn't know that the bodies were there, William could be using that as an ego boost, which is messed up. And also ruins the whole he did it because his kids were dying theory, aside from the whole him killing before his kids died thing. Also, how did the police not confiscate the animatronics for evidence? Penultimately, in at number 2, First Victim. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological clues that they could use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst ways possible. He starts killing off kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something even I fear. I'm not a parent, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put that down. I'd be doing it myself, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old. Like, I can feel the rage brewing and I don't even have someone that I could, in theory, make a daughter with. And finally, in at number 1, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has done by far is gotten his own kids killed. Sure, he may not have done it directly, but his actions ended up resulting in all 3 of his kids' demises. Him killing Charlotte got Fredbear's closed, which resulted in him having to open up Circus Babies, which made him have to dust off Baby and the other Fun Times, which were designed to kill in the first place. Baby ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing the animatronic. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic used in the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull, since that was not a spring lock failure due to all the spring locks being active, since it was in animatronic mode, not suit mode, so there was nothing to fail, meaning that he had to have been crushed by the power of his jaw. And while you could argue that it was Michael's fault, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth was overpowered? As the suit technician, William knew what was going on and intentionally souped up the jaw power. And then he gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which ends up getting him stuffed with innards and then letting himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions got all 3 of his kids killed, just because he had to kill his business partner's daughter. And at 10, Cassidy. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, which she's not, but you know what, for you guys. This is one of the dumbest things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't actually consider it a mistake, since the one you should not have killed, after all, is keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer, though. So since it's potentially a mistake, but could also be considered a good thing depending on the angle, I'm gonna go with number 10 for this one. But even if he does consider that a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, which he's not, killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that included Cassidy was certainly a mistake, since it caused literally everything else in his life to go downhill. I mean, it was starting to go downhill, but it started going even worse, okay? And he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others, okay? So if you don't want to count Cassidy as the mistake, because she's not the one you should not have killed, which is still the case, I don't care what you guys say, I know. Count the missing children's incident itself as the mistake. In at 9, blueprints. There is no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated, I'm guessing, that plays the first time you open up Sister Location, just showcases how stupid this man is, okay? The cops know what these animatronics are capable of, and what they were designed to do. And you want to know why? Because the blueprints are just readily available. This man included wireframes of a child being stuck in Funtime Freddy and just left it on his computer. What? Why would you do that? Well, that's so stupid. So when they found that, because you know, obviously they're gonna search his computer, they instantly ended up being even more suspicious of him, and then they were keeping an even closer eye on him. That's also probably why he ends up starting to dress in the spring Bonnie suit even, maybe, which ultimately ends up screwing him over as well. So yeah, designing the Funtimes as killbots was definitely a bit of a mistake, but then leaving the wireframes on your computer was something even dumber, especially considering how one of them was meant to symbolize your dead wife, and the other one ended up killing your daughter. In at 8, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into madness, this is more so because of what she really turns into. Because, like, somehow, this also didn't make Henry end Afton instantly, because if he had, I would understand that. But in the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes Afton to disassemble them and then release their spirits that then scare you into your spring Bonnie suit that crushes you, and then you start going even crazier. But even discounting the game aspect of her, like, killing being a mistake, in both universes where William kills Charlotte, Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the books specifically, unbeknownst to her, she is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace the daughter that Henry had lost, but it's also revealed that the animatronic is also, her adult form is also Baby as well, who can switch between her human and baby form at will, and then her human form doesn't remember being Baby. So yeah, Charlotte in the books also ends up being Baby, which is just a huge mistake for both Afton, Henry, and Scott Cawthon. And at 7, Henry. And while we did mention killing Charlotte, why didn't you off her dad after you realized that he knew everything? Like, why did you think that killing Charlotte would not have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something, hence the green bracelet that he gave her, since he was trying to take extra care to protect her and then she still died. I mean, he could have done more, but that's still a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, okay? And he hasn't even needed vengeance at that point when he gave her the bracelet. So then, you know that he's gonna come after you, or at least seems like he will, so why didn't you kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. Like, yeah, or even if you're paying them off, you'll be fine. They won't put you away for 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well, especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. And then without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for missing kids, so like, come on, just finally off Henry, and then you'd be able to stay as yourself or even Springtrap alive and then not get burned 3 separate times. Plus, your son would be alive. So, yeah. Well, Michael would be, not Crying Child. And at 6, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanessa away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, or at least all of it. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of failsafe that allows her to escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect some random kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series and Afton's life, you'd think that maybe he would have smartened up, at least after 40 fucking years. But, cause like, this is like having a self-destruct button on a bomb, or if the Flash has like a steal all my speed button that someone can just press, it's just stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it a way to fail? You know? Like, this is like probably one of the dumbest things that Afton has done. You know what? I think there are some dumber things, but depending on the way you look at it, it could have even been higher on this list. But seriously, like, what's the point to put a way to undo your evil plans? Like, it's one of the most ridiculous things in this story. And I get that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon. So like, we could have done without it. It's stupid at this point. William has the brain capacity of a freaking toddler. Halfway through, into number 5, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth and Michael did that, and then the spring locks failing was because he was crying. Mostly people were complaining about that on TikTok. However, to me, there is no logical way that an animatronic jaw would have crushed his skull. And you know what? Even not just to me. It should be to all of you as well. The spring locks, like, they weren't in use. They didn't have to keep the things to the side because it was in an animatronic mode. And even if it was, an animatronic jaw would require so much power to actually, like, accomplish the closing of that. So like, the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally superpowered the jaw of Fredbear, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, or maybe even a backup kill suit, or maybe he was originally planning on using Fredbear, but then after his son got crushed in it, he was like, yeah, no, let's move on to Spring Bonnie, okay? This is just the worst way of going about it. There is no way that this was a spring lock failure. The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the spring lock mechanisms, which are the things used to keep the robotic parts to the side, which are the things that would have failed, weren't being used. The spring lock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under stress of keeping the robotic bits away from the person inside the suit, and then they fail, and then that's when all the metal parts go back to where they were. So if it's in robot mode, the spring locks can't fail because they're already in use, okay? Keep in mind, again, the term for spring lock in this context is referring to the parts that move the robotic bits away instead of the actual suit, which is also sometimes referred to as a spring lock, but I'm talking about the actual bits that would have failed because they weren't in use. And at 4, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, what about your daughter? I'm kidding, although we can't really be sure if she was intentional or not, but rather, I mean, what about getting your own kid killed? Like, I don't know how William thought that this was going to work out for him. I feel like this guy just thought, like, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in, and then make sure that my kids love the design so that I know it will work. Hey, honey, come here, Dad wants your help designing this thing. Like, what? Because like, then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever, and then going directly against her father's instructions to see the robot that is basically perfect in her eyes. Like, bro, like, William, why did you think that this was ever going to work out in your favor? Why did you think that this was going to just be all peachy? When has a kid ever listened to a parent, especially at seemingly what her age is, especially when they might be loaded because you have a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dads when they say not to touch a giant robot made specifically to appeal to their generation? Yeah, great idea. You are a special kind of stupid. Just like, add a blacklist of kids not to take. Really. I mean, you have facial recognition tech in FNAF 2. So come on, just set up a blacklist. Just do it. Listen to the Shia LaBeouf and just do it. Getting close to the end, into number 3, animatronics. Like, how the absolute living hell did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies, but also ruin the pizza place. The heat from the animatronics insides when they're actually like moving around would also speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood of mucus and it was smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away wasn't important for the plot, he should have been caught on that and that alone instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Huh, that's not related. Oh, they even make like bone crushing sounds when they move. And nah, we don't need to check these out. Or maybe we should. You know what? Fine, we'll take them in. Oh, look, we found the bodies of the missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest. Like, boom. I don't see how this wasn't an open and shut case right away. Like, this was so goddamn stupid. They shouldn't have made it to the first game. His whole plan was a dumpster fire of bad ideas. And even if you think it was the puppet who put the bodies in the suits, why would they do that? Like, why would they hide the bodies? But ultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. Being the brains behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in the universe, we'd expect a lot from William Afton. Like, maybe using the brain that made these. Or maybe that's asking too much. Because, I mean, he's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer who avoided the cops for how long? So, you know, he should really know what he's doing, right? Apparently not, since after discovering the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets, but inadvertently released the spirits of his original 5 victims. When seeing them, he ended up panicking, which is kind of reasonable in my eyes because, you know, they're freaking ghost kids, but also they're ghost kids that you killed. So then this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the spring-lock suits, including the spring bodysuit he uses to kill people, ends up climbing inside the suit in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and scare away the ghost kids. However, dumbass didn't notice the moisture of the room, the leaking ceiling, and just his probably sweat, which caused the spring locks that were active in this moment since it was in suit mode to fail, which would have killed him, if only. And finally, in at number 1, the Platinum Rule. The biggest mistake that William has ever made, and I will stand by this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his own establishment, okay? It's unknown if this was always his intention, or maybe if he planned to kill somewhere else and then just was like, no, I'll do it here. But, like, come on, who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic for your business? Okay, dealers don't kill their best customers. It's bad for business. So why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else. This is basically just killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back while the investigation is underway. It didn't help your business either, okay? You had to close the first location, resulting in you opening another one that killed your daughter, and then you had to close that one and open up a new one, which ends up getting closed, and then you get locked in a room for 30 goddamn years, okay? This one mistake leads to literally everything else in the series. You don't do that. The Platinum Rule, we learned this from Barney Stinson. Don't crap where you eat, okay? If you just don't do it. And at 10, Springlock. A lot of people still think that Afton died while being spring-locked in FNAF 3. And honestly, when the game came out, this was actually seemingly correct. I mean, we never really saw Afton go limp like he truly died, but for all intents and purposes, Afton was dead in FNAF 3. But then, as more games came out and more was added to the story and to the lore, Afton was shown to never have died in the game, since, you know, he was, as we now know, being kept alive by the one you should not have killed, who was possessing him as an individual and was keeping him alive so that he could continue to suffer for all of his crimes. So honestly, before William even started his whole always coming back thing, he came back from the dead, at least technically speaking, which I still think is damn impressive, okay? I haven't died before, even technically, unless we count like on the inside or my dreams, but hey, we don't need to talk about that at the start of a video, right? In at 9, Explosion. Okay, so, well, physically speaking, William dies in The Man in Room 1280, the 3rd story from the 5th Fazbear Frights book. Quite extravagantly, might I add, exploding into a pile of mush right before a pastor's eyes. But like, how would that have been possible? How could William just have exploded like that? It's not something that you really think about, and I think I have an explanation, but it's certainly a bit more interesting than spontaneous combustion. William knew about possession and how it works, okay? He knew about agony and how his daughter got scooped and his son was crunched. So, what if he tried to ensure his own survival by intentionally causing himself extreme agony, injecting or installing some form of explosive that, when triggered or when in the vicinity of a Fazbear warehouse or trigger device, would cause him to explode violently from the inside out, creating what is possibly one of the most agonizing ways to die, even in the FNAF series. I mean, this guy was absolutely mental, okay? Even potentially injecting himself with molten soul metal remnant in an effort to keep himself alive. So for me, it isn't out of the question that William inserted an explosive device into himself. But considering all that comes after this, glitch trap and whatnot, and the fact that Burn Trap still has William's body inside, I don't think that this one is really canon, and I don't think that this actually caused William to die. And if you're enjoying this video, guys, hit like, okay? It really helps us out, especially with the algorithm almighty. Praise be its name. So yeah, did you do it? Why the heck not? Okay, do it now, babe, please. In at 8, second spring lock. I say second, even though technically Afton's second trapping was in the books, but also some may not consider that possible in the main series, but you know what? In the context of the number, it makes sense. So, could William have suffered a spring lock failure before getting trapped in the spring Bonnie suit like we see in FNAF 3? It's possible. Explains why I say again as well, because, well, it would have been first, but it's again on this list. Since William is described to have scars that are consistent with a spring lock failure in the novels before becoming Springtrap. So, could it have happened in the games? Maybe. We don't really see William in a visual sense in the games, aside from him being purple. So, I don't know. Maybe William was the reason the spring lock suits were retired in the first place, since we hear of an unfortunate incident at the sister location. So, is that unfortunate incident William? There are plenty of people that it could be, none of which are named, but William having to deal with his own injury would certainly get them put out of commission for a time, but with William then continuing to use the suit to kill people and then putting it on again like we see in the FNAF 3 cutscene suggests that this scenario is unlikely, but you know what, it's still possible, so it's still a possible death. And at 7, FNAF 3. Okay, look, the last few numbers may seem to make this not make sense, but listen, okay? Afton, in a sense, does die in FNAF 3, since this was meant to be the final game in the series until the fans were disappointed with the main jump scare, okay? So, prior to Scott releasing FNAF 4, William Afton was canonically dead, and the series was over. But after that, things were more complicated than they ever had been before. And many people do consider Afton dead after getting spring-locked, like I said, which isn't true, since he was being kept alive by the one he should not have killed, aka Crying Child. Oh yeah, you're gonna get mad at me, but it's true. But technically speaking, until the continuation of the story between the time of FNAF 3's release and the day before FNAF 4's release, William was dead. Oh, wait a second. He shows up in the final newspaper in the background, doesn't he? I don't know. Maybe he was never supposed to be dead, but the series was supposed to be. So as far as I'm concerned, if the series dies, so does the character. And it would have stayed that way too if it weren't for you meddling kids and your damn animatronics. Afton would have been dead in the spring Bonnie suit eventually, okay? Never being possessed by his son because he wasn't added. He would have eventually ended up shutting down just due to the wear of the animatronic, since Henry wouldn't have kept setting fires that would remove all the rust and whatnot. At least I think that's how it would work. And eventually he'd have been forgotten when Poppy Playtime came out, so yeah, this counts for me. And at 6, Glitch Trap. Currently, post-True Security Breach ending, there seem to be 2 instances of Afton roaming the halls of the Pizzaplex. Or I guess, one roaming and one trapped in a giant ghost of animatronics past blob. So, this really begs a philosophical question: is Glitch Trap truly an instance of William Afton? Because if it is, then everything we should know about the series and how possession works in the FNAF universe is wrong. Currently, from what we've established in this universe, there are 2 main ways to actually maintain life after what should have been death in this FNAF world, universe, whatever. Or at least in the games, there's 2, okay? The books also have human robots, but that hasn't been proven canonical yet. The games have Remnant and Possession, which are connected but aren't the same thing. Remnant is seemingly a byproduct of Possession, being a combination of metal and soul, showcased in the books as the 5 endoskeletons of the original Freddy's animatronics possessed by the original missing children's incident victims, and then Possession comes before that. But Afton wasn't possessing anything, he was being possessed. And Glitch Trap is an intentional feature within FNAF VR, along with also being a virus, or I guess the virus took the form of the main antagonist that was meant to be in the VR game. But it also takes control over Vanessa. The only explanation here is that either Vanessa is a robot, but then again, if she is, then why is she looking at herself in the rooftop ending if she doesn't have a soul because she is a robot? So maybe this needs its own video, maybe it doesn't, I don't know, let me know. Halfway through into number 5, Henry. In the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is also the year that Afton's life starts going downhill in the worst ways possible. But he starts off killing kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, and I'm not even a parent. So I can only imagine how this must have felt for Henry. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put William down, okay? I'd be doing it with myself with my bare hands, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old, okay? Afton got lucky that Henry didn't have more initiative in my mind, okay? I have no idea why he didn't, because I'd rather go to jail for killing the man that killed my daughter than chase him for 50 years trying to burn him to the ground. But like, come on, okay? Who would really blame him too? Afton got so lucky that Henry is just a little who wants to use fire to stop him, okay? I wouldn't care about going to prison if Afton had killed my kid. No chance in hell, especially when she was that young. I would have choked him out with my bare hands and wrenched his neck. Also, hello to the jury. In it for zombie. There's also the possibility that Afton has been a zombie this entire time, and honestly, that makes me extremely angry. I'm masking it though. Because out of all the things that the FNAF series has done, this would be the cheapest and the worst. Forget Dream Theory, forget this all being a storybook, forget everything else. This would be the dumbest thing that FNAF could do, since it would basically come out of nowhere, okay? People already think that Michael is a zombie after getting innards shoved into him, but zombies aren't purple, guys, okay? And then making that into yet another, like, father-like son parallel would be so stupid and such a horrible retcon that it would be worse than it all being a dream, especially after establishing that Afton was being possessed prior to the spring locking, which would most likely have ended up with his death, and if he was made into a zombie, that would probably be his death point, okay? It would just change too much about the series for things to make sense, and would probably result in a whole lot of rage from the community, or at least I hope everyone would find this stupid enough to get mad at, because I would, and I want to be validated. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, FNAF 6. Could William have been dead before FNAF 6 takes place? I think it's a possibility, technically, because like, what happened to Springtrap between games to cause such horrific warps to his body? Like, sure, he was burnt in FNAF 3, but we also see him alive and not all that damaged in Sister Location's Night 7 ending cutscene. So where did all of this additional damage and warping come from? The head becomes larger somehow, and so do the feet. I don't know, okay? This genuinely doesn't make any sense. We know that they're the same person, thanks to Ultimate Custom Night's voice lines, but I'm so confused as to what could have happened to cause this. I'm sure the extra damage comes from possibly fending off wild animals, since, you know, he's still a body, a rotting corpse that would attract scavengers. So how did the head of the suit get bigger? It's not like it evolved, it's not like it leveled up like freaking Magikarp from punching all these wolves. My only guess is that, like, William either broke into a Fazbear warehouse and tried to, like, reassemble himself, or, I don't know, maybe the gases from an actual decaying corpse, if he was dead prior to this, caused the head to expand, but even that wouldn't make sense. I don't know, we see so much damage. Maybe being a corpse just caused the suit to mess up because Scott was like, that's what I want. But ultimately, into number 2, the Blob. The true ending of FNAF Security Breach is seemingly one of the most interesting parts of the game because it contains a whole load of little things to watch out for, and also actually ends the game, which at this point I think is probably the best thing. After making our way into Burn Trap's area, Freddy is going to be taken over by Afton's newest form, and then it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using 3 monitors with corresponding buttons that activate fire and seemingly trigger his weakness, which is a whole other story. Players, you'll need to avoid the animatronics that come out after you, but you can use doors to lock them out. You can use Freddy to scare him off. There's a lot that you can do. And then when Burn Trap is finally burned even more, I guess at this point he's just trapped, because like in math it cancels out, right? The blob, which was like a tentacle monster thing that was attacking us, then attacks Burn Trap, William, and then tries to make sure he doesn't get free, okay? Then we run away, but my question is, does the blob actually kill William? I don't know. Like, there are death animations in the game files, apparently, allegedly, I haven't seen them, but they weren't used, so we can't really consider that canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing is definitely annoying, and I thought it would have ended before this game, but clearly not, so I don't know anymore. Just God, for fuck's sakes, please let William be dead. And finally, in at number 1, Never Died. Currently, what we know about Remnant and Agony tells us that to destroy it properly, we need to burn it, hence why there are so many damn fires in this series. FNAF 3, 6, and Security Breach all end with something or someone getting burned. FNAF 3's fire was all about dealing with Springtrap, FNAF 6 was about putting everyone who knew about the atrocities to rest, and then in FNAF 9 we burned Burn Trap multiple times to try to get him to stop possessing Freddy. And then it's all because Henry learned that the only way to destroy Remnant and put these things to rest was through fire. But how is that really how, like, is that really the thing? Because, like, all 3 fires haven't really done anything. They haven't done shit. We've been told that fire is the only thing hot enough to burn off the Remnant, but it's also been described as Remnant liquid metal. So if the soul-infused metal can become a liquid, then how is it possible to just burn off the soul part? That's not how metallurgy works. I think it's metallurgy, I don't know. That's not how things work, okay? That's not how the universe works. Dr. Talbot is lying, he's William, alright? There's a whole video on it, go check it out, alright? William is lying, he made up the fire thing so he couldn't be killed. And it's in FNAF 3 Springtrap. It's pretty universally known that FNAF 3 is one of the easier FNAF games. With only one animatronic that can actually kill you, you can juggle him between a couple rooms for basically the whole night. You're able to survive fairly easily. But while some consider this game scary, overall it's one of the least scary of all, and that's thanks to Springtrap. Springtrap's jump scare in this game is actually the worst jump scare in the series, having the only real scare factor being the sound that plays along with it. But as for the actual model, he just kinda moves towards you a little bit, and that's it. There was also apparently an interview where Scott said that he was going to end the series after game 3, but the community's disappointment with the Springtrap jump scare caused him to make the 4th game with the Nightmare animatronics. I'm unable to find that interview, but that also makes sense to me. Like, the Nightmare animatronics were sort of overcorrecting for the lack of scares in FNAF 3, since you could also easily predict the phantom jump scares. So, I can see it. And at 9, Sister Location. While William wasn't really in Sister Location as one of the enemies, because you know, all those fused into Ennard, he was still in it during the final cutscene, where Michael is giving his final speech, saying, "Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all here. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now, but something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in the shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you." After that final line, Springtrap jumps out from behind the ruins of Fazbear's Fright, which burned down at the end of FNAF 3. This is less of a jump scare, more of a way to show that Springtrap and by proxy William are still alive. However, it's still scarier than the normal Springtrap jump scare if you weren't ready for it or knew that it was coming. So. And at 8, Scrap Trap. See, this one is a bit of a weird one because, well, like, you can decide if it's possible or not. Since you don't really have to salvage an animatronic, you can just leave it for scrap and not keep it inside the building, thus allowing yourself not to have to stress over a psychotic killer rabbit, which is my personal recommendation. However, if you make the fool's decision and trap Scrap Trap, you have the possibility of being jump scared, which usually would only happen when you're not focused on protecting yourself. So, mostly when you're worried about your pizzeria or completing completing the tasks you need to do in order to leave and to complete the day. But this one is more unexpected, and Scrap Trap is certainly freakier than Springtrap is. And this jump scare is actually more like a jump scare than the Springtrap one, so needless to say, it deserves to be higher. Well, higher than those. However, there are scarier jump scares despite this. And at 7, VR Springtrap. FNAF VR may be one of the more recent games in the series, but it certainly is one of the freakiest. VR horror is